and a welcome here to Superpowered Pop here with Dan Tortora. Of course, I am happy to be here with you. Superpowered Pop coming to you on our YouTube channel as well as on our Facebook channel at Superpowered Pop. That's Powered for powered, Superpowered Pop. Of course, you could find us on X as well as Facebook and Instagram by searching at Superpowered Pop. That's at Superpowered Pop. So happy to be here with you. Of course, you can see behind me here, we are talking about the Ironheart series. And I love how they did this because we waited for Ironheart a long time, right? It was rumored it was going to be coming out, and then it was when was this going to actually happen? When were we going to officially see Ironheart? And we waited and waited and waited, and here we are with Ironheart. And then the question was when it came out on June 24th, which is my G-Mama's Remembrance Day. My grandma on my mom's side passed away on June 24th, so we don't get sad on that day. We celebrate her and we honor her on her Remembrance Day. So June 24th, very important to me. And of course, finding out the show was coming out on June 24th, I said, okay, so we're going to see an episode, right? Maybe two. And the way that these episodes came out is it's like, here's one, here's two, here's three, and then the following week, here's four, here's five, here's six. And so we weren't waiting 6 weeks. We were getting a triple dose of Ironheart in the first 2 weeks of this show coming out, which has been really awesome to be able to watch it because, you know, I'm one of those people where I'd rather let the series just come out and let it do all its episodes so that when I start watching it, I don't have to wait for, you know, next week and the week after and all that stuff. I can just watch it all the way through. That's what I did with Game of Thrones. You know, people had finished the entire series well before I started it, and I gave myself like months to watch it. And I didn't have to wait. I could just literally go to the next episode. So I like how Ironheart did that first and foremost, that they gave us 6 episodes in 2 weeks. That they gave us the first 3, and then they gave us the last 3. Now, those of you that have watched our channel at Superpowered Pop, either on YouTube or Facebook, you know, and on our social media, you know that I did a video, and I'm actually going to share it. If we can see this video on here, I'm going to share the video once again for those of you that may not have seen it, because I made a prediction here. And just so you know, we are going to talk about spoilers. So 10-9-8-7-6-5-4-3-2-1. If you are still watching Superpowered Pop, we will be spoiling Ironheart. So if you have not finished it, you know, whatever it may be, if you're watching it right now, pause this video, finish it for yourself. I don't want to ruin anything for you. And once it's done, then come back to this show. So you have been warned, we will be talking about spoilers. And so I'm going to play this for you.
Television series on Disney Plus brings us into the world of Riri Williams, a.k.a. Ironheart, who we first saw in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, a.k.a. the MCU, back in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, also known as Black Panther 2. Riri Williams first appeared in Marvel Comics in 2016 from Brian Michael Bendis and Mike Deodato, and we saw her in Invincible. Iron Man number 7 was that first appearance before she got her own series in Marvel Comics. This is a story where we will obviously see technology and taking what Tony Stark had built and putting her own spin on it. We will also see the world of magic and something nefarious potentially going on. Could we see Mephisto? I'm very excited to be covering Ironheart on Superpowered Pop. This is Dan.
So that's prediction going into the show, and you can see the timestamp, so you can definitely check it out. And so let's take a look at this right now. So you could go back to it, and you could see the timestamp of this. This was June 24th that this came out, and I released that video preview of Ironheart and my thoughts here right before the series was released on June 24th. So you could see that prediction of Mephisto is something that I said going into the show before we knew what was going to happen. Now, I can't take full credit for the Mephisto conversation, because obviously other people have been talking about Mephisto, and of course, EA Voss on the channel that obviously I have a lot of respect for, Eric Voss, who is on the channel for New Rock Stars. Has been talking about Mephisto for years, so I got to give credit where credit is due. And of course, there was rumors with this show taking a while to come out that Sacha Baron Cohen was potentially going to be playing Mephisto in this series. And then the question became, why would you have Mephisto, who is essentially Marvel's devil, so to speak? Why would you have this satanic figure show up in a series that is about an Iron Man type character? It didn't really make sense why this would happen, right? So there was conversation from EA Voss about this. There was conversation from other people that had gotten, a leak or some information about Sacha Baron Cohen being cast as Mephisto. So this is something that's been going on for years. But going into this show, when I watched the previews and I saw that red cape and I saw kind of how things looked, and the red cape is obviously he's got it hung up on this thing, and it kind of looks like a bulb or something, or maybe where you put the hood. But the way that looked from far away, it looks like it was essentially, it looked like Mephisto from far away. Because when you didn't see kind of that circular piece where you could hang the hood on, and that maybe it was just a display, when you saw the cape from far away, it actually looked like it was a scary movie where something looks a little distorted and a little strange and far away, and you're just like looking at this really creepy thing with a light on it. And so to me, it kind of looked like Mephisto in the trailer when they showed it so quick. So I can't say that I was the original person to talk about Mephisto. I can't say that I talked about Sacha Baron Cohen playing Mephisto first, but I can say that going into this series, I did predict that we were going to see Mephisto. After everything I've heard over the years and what I saw in the trailer, that's what really pushed me to say, okay, maybe this Ironheart Mephisto thing has some legs to it. Maybe this is true. And so, credit where credit's due for those of you that talked about Mephisto and that talked about Sacha Baron Cohen. So, I can say that I predicted it off of the trailer, but I did not predict it before that. So credit to everybody that's been talking about it over the years here. We are going to get into a bunch of different pieces here. We will get into this video this is actually the moment, so we might as well play this now.
I go by a lot of names. Some of them are actually a bit cruel and hurtful to me. But I like you, Riri, so you can call me Mephisto.
And we can see that her eyes actually they change in this, and that might have come in a little bit low. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to replay it here so that you can all check it out once again. But this is the scene, and obviously this scene is owned by Disney. It's owned by, it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Marvel Studios, Disney, Disney Plus, all that good stuff. So we're not claiming any rights to this video or audio. We're just using this for context to share. So I do want to make it known here so they don't put any flag or anything on our video. So I'm going to go ahead and play this again.
Okay, Mr. Dormammu, man.
Dormammu! Dormammu! That ugly pillock isn't fit to clean my glorious arsehole.
Okay. If it ain't Dormammu, then what?
I'm sorry, I should have introduced myself. I go by a lot of names. Some of them are actually a bit cruel and hurtful to me. But I like you, Riri, so you can call me Mephisto.
Mephisto. Oh. So, is that it's supposed to mean something to me.
There's something about her eyes and how she looks at him after she says that. If we go back to that and we take a look at it here, you can see how, her eyes just they look normal here. It looks like Riri and what we've seen in the series. And so you just kind of, you have to look at the whites of her eyes here. So look at this, right? And then we speed a little bit forward here after he says Mephisto, and then she says it. So you see her eyes here, right? And she looks tired. And then all of a sudden, look at that. It almost looks fake. It almost looks like CGI. And the way that she looks at him here when she goes, oh, it kind of makes you wonder, is she seeing him for who he is? Is she seeing his true nature? Is there something about his face that's changed? Because these eyes from Riri do not look like the eyes that we see earlier in this scene. So that was just really kind of strange. It almost looked fake. And we've seen other things like this. And in a weird way, when people have talked about the negative spiritual world and demons and whatnot, there's been other eyes on the internet that when things are being discussed in this respect, the eyes kind of look like this. And I just found that to be interesting. Whatever that was, maybe they shoot that scene on multiple days and one day she looked more tired and now she's more awake. Did they change the lighting, and just kind of edit it together? Whatever it is, it looks different to me. And like I said, if you see her eyes here and you just take a look at how her eyes look, they look more animated. They look almost fake. And again, it's after he says his name and after she says it. So you wonder if something clicks in her, or because you see her eyes here and then you see them closer up there, and then they look totally different after she says the name out loud. So he says Mephisto, she says Mephisto, and all of a sudden her eyes look kind of weird here. So it was just a note that I made. It's something that I saw when I was watching the show in real time, and then when I watched it back, it's something that kind of stuck with me, and I want to make sure we talked about it here on Superpowered Pop today. So I have a lot of things to get into, and once again, I want to thank Disney Plus for the show, and Disney Plus and Disney and Marvel Studios and all that good stuff. Marvel Television own the rights to that video and audio. We claim no copyright to it. I just wanted to show it for context. There's plenty of channels on YouTube and social media that show video, and they continue to show video. So, if they can, we can. And I look at something like this and, I want to make sure that we do this for context, and I don't want to shortchange the people watching and listening. So I've seen video show up elsewhere. We've give credit where credit is due, and I haven't seen certain channels give credit. So I want to make sure that we give credit and we state repeatedly why we're putting it out there, what it's meant to be for, and that we make sure that we are clear that we're just using it for context and claiming no rights to it. So thank you to YouTube and to Marvel and to Disney Plus and all that good stuff. And now that we've handled that, let's have a conversation. So a lot of things to unpack, a lot of things to get into. I want to take a look at what happened in this final episode that showed us Mephisto and kind of look at the pieces here. So this is Mephisto. When we first meet him, we see the character of the Hood that is essentially trying to escape, right? He is in trouble, and there are law enforcement people on both sides of this tunnel, and they're coming after him. And then all of a sudden this person shows up. This door shows up, and he asks him if he'd like to go through this door. Obviously, this should throw him off. This is a strange thing. Why is there a door in the middle of a tunnel? But he, of course, goes through it, and he meets Mephisto. Now, he doesn't know who Mephisto is. We don't hear his name in the scene, but if you've seen the devil or devil-type characters in any other TV show or movie, we know that, this look here, having some type of facial hair, having the hair slicked back, and wearing very nice clothing is something that we've seen in other TV shows and or movies. So he gives him this hood, and when he is talking with him about the deal in this pizza shop, and that being Mephisto speaking with the hood, when he talks with him about this deal, he says, "Oh, you left your cape or whatever." He goes, "No, that's for you." And so this is Parker Robbins, aka the Hood, played by Anthony Ramos, who looks like the son, and this is kind of crazy here. He looks like Terrence Howard, looks like he could be Terrence Howard's son, and Terrence Howard was in the first Iron Man, and then he was recast, and Don Cheadle took the role of War Machine and the best friend of Tony Stark, who becomes Iron Man, and that being Rhodey. And so it's just funny how the first MCU project in Marvel Studios is Iron Man back in 2008, and we have Terrence Howard, and now with the new iron-powered hero Ironheart, we have someone who looks like Terrence Howard's son in the Hood. And so he takes his hood, he shakes hands with Mephisto, and we see in this episode that he has made a deal with Mephisto, hence all these like blood veins that have been going through his body. They've now gone from his back down his back, and they are taking shape all over it. They're showing themselves all over his body. So we're now seeing it scar his face. In this scene, Parker is speaking to his father. We find out that in this scene, he is speaking to one of the other powered people here, and that's played by Alden Ehrenreich, who plays Ezekiel Zeke Stane. We find out he is Obadiah Stane's son again, with Parker Robbins, this character that is Parker Robbins, played by Anthony Ramos, with Anthony Ramos looking like Terrence Howard's son, and an ode back to the original Rhodey from the original Iron Man. In the original Iron Man, Obadiah Stane builds his own iron-powered suit and tries to kill Tony Stark, and we find out that this is his friend who has betrayed him and betrayed Tony's late father, Howard Stark. And so, again, an ode back to Iron Man as we see Obadiah Stane's son here, who is Ezekiel Stane, played by Alden Ehrenreich, and he is someone who becomes high-powered himself, and we'll talk about that as we go on here. This is just a shot, and I love this in the show. I wanted to show you this. This is from the final episode, episode 6, but I wanted to showcase this in and of itself because I just thought it was really cool that part of this series that we're watching from inside of Riri's suit, or watching it from inside of her helmet and seeing, what she's seeing inside of her helmet here of the Ironheart suit. And I just think this is cool. We've seen Tony do it throughout the years, and now we're seeing Riri Williams do it inside of her suit. And I just think it's a really cool way to showcase the character and help us feel closer and more connected to the character and almost feel like we're in the Ironheart suit ourselves. And then the next picture to show here, this is the final iteration of the Ironheart costume, which is powered by magic, which is confusing because Ironheart and the magical realm is not something that we, know her for in the comics. Her cross with Mephisto, this is something they're doing in the MCU. So this story is different, but obviously in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we've already met Doctor Strange. We have met Iron Fist in the Netflix series and in Defenders as well. So we know of this mystical thing with Iron Fist, with Doctor Strange and some other characters, of course, with Wong. And so we see this iteration of Riri's suit, which kind of looks like Coke Zero to me, and that might just be because I drink Coke Zero, but the black and red got a nice touch. And of course, we have the heart here at her chest, which I thought was really, really cool. I really like that costume. And again, we're seeing inside of her suit, and this is looking through her eyes. You can see that she's looking at Zeke Stane, and she now knows that she could see right through him. She could see that he is essentially a human machine now. He's gone through a bunch of upgrades. He made a decision to take his $1 million of tech and put it inside of his body, but the thing that he did not know is that Parker Robbins had asked his crew to go ahead and make him the decision maker on this. So it was supposed to be that Ezekiel Stane not only did this to himself, but he had the power to control it, and he was the administrator. And you see admin override detective, and that admin override detected is because Parker asked his team to make him the person who was in control of Zeke. So Zeke essentially does not know this, but will get to know this in episode 6, that he has, well, in the later episodes here, that he is essentially he's the henchman of Parker Robbins, aka the Hood, and he has to serve him because Parker is the admin of this tech. So you can see what she's seeing here. You can see it says energetic displacement network, electrostatic repulsors, and it says Ezekiel Stane. So you see his name, you see that it says target right over his shoulder, and then it says augmented hypothalamus, and it says biological mesh implantations, voice command program. So it's letting you know a bunch of different things of what's going on with him, and I think this is cool and how it assesses any threat that may be to Ironheart, and that the suit will do this. We do see this fight between Zeke Stane and Ironheart, and that he essentially has this Electro-looking powers, kind of that Spider-Man-esque thing of the character Electro, and we're seeing his powers here and electrocuting her. We go back to the Hood wants to hear from this mysterious character. We don't know his name at this point. I know I kind of did a Tarantino thing and showed you the video beforehand, but going back to a previous part before we learn Mephisto's name, and that Sacha Baron Cohen is officially Mephisto in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we see that the Hood is talking with him, asking for more, and the Hood realizes that Mephisto now has an accent, and he said, I didn't know that you had this accent. And you can see that when Mephisto was with him, he was treating him like, hey, I need you. I want you to be here. Do a deal with me. He's treating him like he's important, right? And we've seen this with certain people in certain businesses that are transactional and not relationship building. When you're in front of Mephisto, you are the only one that Mephisto cares about. He treats you like you are his person. He needs you. You're going to have this great relationship. And once you sign the deal, he goes on to the next deal. And he doesn't seem to have the same nice, kind, positive bedside manner, and not making you feel like you are seen, but essentially that you're just another one that he's dealing with. We see that here, and he's essentially telling the Hood to know his place, and the Hood's saying, okay, well, you gave me all this power. Can I have more power now? And then we see that Ironheart has won this battle with Obadiah Stane's son, Ezekiel, and she essentially tells him that she has to kick him in his private area in order to reboot him, which I thought was interesting. Maybe a little anti-men moment there. Strange of all ways to get him to reset and not be controlled by Parker Robbins is to kick him in his private area. And then we see in the fight that she has with Parker Robbins that she is now powered by magic as well. We see that all of the magic is red. We know when Doctor Strange is using it, his is a yellowish orange, a golden type color. This is red. This looks more like Parker Robbins. This looks more like the devil. This looks more demonic. This looks more Scarlet Witch. And we don't really know anything about this. We just kind of know that it's here, and we know that she was assisted in having these powers. So, we know that essentially Reagan Aaliyah, who plays Zelma, is the one that helps her have these powers because she has trained in Kamar-Taj, which is where Doctor Strange was trained and where other people have been trained. And we see that in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that there are other trainees that are there. We do see that Ned Leeds, the best friend of Peter Parker, training out there after Doctor Strange and Ned realize that there's some magic in Ned. So we have seen that there is a training of youngsters like Ned Leeds, and now we find out that there is another person that was trained there, and that being Zelma, and she powers the suit because essentially Riri's been dealing with the issue of her suit does not have an arc reactor, right? She doesn't have the Tesseract. She talks about not having the money and the resources that Tony Stark had. And so what can be constant power that will continue to keep her suit going, that she won't have to recharge it? What is reusable power that will continue to go on forever? And so Zelma gives her this magic, which Riri doesn't know where it comes from. And I don't think Zelma truly knows where it comes from, because she was only 50% sure and then 47% sure that she thought that the Hood, Parker Robbins, was working for Dormammu and not Mephisto. So this magic, could this be Mephisto's magic? Who does this belong to is the question. Is it Scarlet Witch? Who knows? In this fight, we see that Parker Robbins, aka the Hood, starts to turn into a creature and kind of look like a werewolf here. Also, a demon. We see it closer here. This picture makes him look like Morbius from Sony's Spider-Verse, but we can see that he is losing his humanity. You see it in his teeth, you see it in his face, you see it in his eyes. He is starting to become a demon himself with this power that was given to him from Mephisto. And of course, we see Riri pull the switcheroo here and give him the little okey doke as he thinks that he's got her at the end of this fight, and she uses her suit to self-destruct to try and destroy him. It doesn't work, and he comes up here and talks about it for a little bit. You know, every villain has to tell the world their monologue before they go and kill anybody, especially when it's one of the beloved characters, and he goes to shoot Riri and finds out that she is essentially a hologram. She rips the hood off, and then she leaves. When she leaves, there is someone sitting at the pizza shop again and again with food, and he is having some coffee here, and she sits down with him. And as you can see, when he is stirring his coffee, if you look closely, the reflection shows the true nature, the true look of Mephisto. Before he says his name, we see the red character with long dark hair and glowing eyes, and I enhanced it here so you could see it even more so in the spoon. So you can see Mephisto. I knew as soon as I watched this in real time that when he stirred, and then he stirred and he lifted his spoon, and they stopped on his spoon for a second before they went to the next piece of the scene. That camera that stayed on it, I know well enough from, being someone who enjoys telling stories and loves to create and wants to screenwrite myself, and I've worked on some screenwriting in the past, that if someone is going to stay on a part for a second and allow the camera to see the angle, that means they're trying to show you something. Something that many people may have missed, something that I may have missed in the past. I saw this, and that extra split second of being on this spoon, I knew there was something to look at, and of course I could see the true nature of Mephisto, so I wanted you to go ahead and see that for yourselves. And then we see that Riri, we don't see her officially shake hands, but she kind of seems like she's not going to do it. She talks to Mephisto and says, what I want you can't give me because, Natalie's already dead. And of course, Gary, her stepdad, dead as well. And then he continues to speak to her, and when he tells her essentially that he knows what she wants, she has flashes of Natalie, and something inside of her goes from thinking, okay, yeah, whatever, to believing, okay, maybe this guy can do something for me. And then we see the Riri that we're used to seeing in the comics with her hairstyle a little bit different now. She looks extremely tired. She looks older. And Natalie shows up and she thinks, great, I got my AI back. This is wonderful. And then then Natalie reaches out and touches the forehead of Riri Williams, and Riri's sitting there going like, how can you touch me? Because you're AI. And then she reaches out and she hugs her, and she realizes this deal that I have made with Mephisto has worked, except for, remember those bloody veins that were growing all through Parker Robbins? Well, look at this picture and look at it again. As we close up here, we see that those blood veins are now growing on Riri, which shows us that even though we didn't physically see her shake hands with Mephisto, she did make a deal with this demonic, devilish character of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And once again, when we go back and we take a look at this, and I'm just going to rewind it back here a little bit, when she calls him Dormammu, because that's what Zelma thought that he was, and had shown a picture which kind of looked like the devil here, and he laughs at being called Dormammu, and then essentially she's like, okay, well then who are you? And he says, well, I like you, Riri. People call me a lot of different things, but I like you, so I'm going to tell you my name. And he, in this moment, says Mephisto, and you hear the music, his little theme music here, and when he laughs, you can hear that he is not human. You hear this weird laugh that gets deeper and sounds a little bit different here, and obviously playing with audio and being someone who edits and does a bunch of things with audio, and I've been doing it since early 2000s, 2003, 4. So you can catch those little things that show that he is not human. So he has made a deal with Parker Robbins. He has made a deal with Riri Williams. Who is Mephisto? Well, let's talk about him, and I want to give a lot of respect and appreciation to marvel.fandom.com, who gives a lot of background on these characters. Now, Mephisto is from Earth 616, which is the main Earth in the Marvel comics. It's the first one that we interact with, and of course, it's the baseline Earth and universe from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So we take a look at this, and Mephisto, one of the quotes that he said here, I was reigning in hell when your kind were still slithering in muck. And sure, we've had our laughs since then, humanity and I. But after so many eons of incessant sinfulness, it has gotten so that even the sight of a sniveling, lecherous priest being flayed alive fails to bring a smile to my face. Hell makes slaves of us all sooner or later, even the devil who sits the throne, and that is coming from Mephisto. So let's do a little background on Mephisto. He is an extra-dimensional demon who rules a fiery pocket dimension that he refers to as Hell or Hades, although it is not the Hell of the Christian or Catholic religion, nor is it the Hades ruled by Hades, the Olympian god of the dead, from that, conversation and, the Greek mythology and whatnot. Mephisto calls his extra-dimensional realm Hell in order to exploit Earth human beings' belief in a single being of absolute evil, who is often referred to as Satan or the devil, and that is who rules that realm. Mephisto resembles the traditional visual conceptions of the devil. It's not known whether this is Mephisto's true appearance, or like that red appearance that we saw with the glowing yellow eyes and the dark hair. It's not known if that's his true appearance or if that he's adopted it in order to resemble the devil. He also allows himself to be called names that human beings give to their conceptions of the devil, such as Mephisto, a shortened form of Mephistopheles, the name given to the devil in the Faust legends, and of a possible fallen angel. Now, Mephisto has allowed people to believe him to be Satan himself. Mephisto is not Lucifer, though. His domain is inhabited by himself, lesser demons who serve him, and by the astral forms of certain deceased human beings, which have been trapped in the bodies of demons. So let's get to know him a little bit better here. There is so much history. Now, Mephisto's true origin has been lost in time. Many stories claim to be the origin. And I just want to say this as someone who believes in God, as I talk about something that is demonic, devilish, and say certain names, that I do want to make clear here that I believe in God, and I wholeheartedly welcome God into my life and not the devil or any other demonic or evil thing. I do want to make that clear because talking about this stuff is not something that is encouraged, I would say, for someone who believes in God. But, you know, obviously God knows I'm talking about comic books here. So the primordial entity known as Nemesis was born at the beginning of time. It was alone in the universe, which was the first cosmos. It used its great power to create life from its own form, but sadly the creations turned out to be evil, becoming the first demons. Saddened by what he created and wiped them all out, alone again, the entity committed suicide, and the remains of Nemesis became the Infinity Stones. After its death, the demons were reborn, and one of the beings was Mephisto, but the power of the stones was forbidden to these beings. And then there was the other story of eons ago, the elder god Demogorge defeated the other members of his race, ending their rule. The dark energy created from their death formed the first demons. Those included Thog, Satanish, and Mephisto. So there's those conversations. And then also, while Mephisto was still young in the form of a fly, he witnessed the celestial known as the progenitor succumb to the horde, and Mephisto took the opportunity to lay his maggots, which is disgusting. Now, Garden of Eden, according to Lilith, who is the love interest of Mephisto, in the form of a snake, he tricked Adam and Eve into partaking of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, ensuring their banishment from the biblical Garden of Eden. Mephisto became increasingly obsessed with manipulating living humans into selling their souls to him, neglecting the teeming masses of damned souls already condemned to his realm. 1 million BC, taking on the form of a snake again, Mephisto appeared before a young man belonging to a tribe of mammoth-riding early humans who had been slaughtered by a Wendigo. Mephisto offered the man the power to avenge his people in exchange for guessing his name, and bonded him to a spirit of vengeance to make him the first Ghost Rider. And with that being said, I want to jump into the deals that we know Mephisto has made in the comics. One of them being to create the first ever Ghost Rider. In Marvel Spotlight 1971, number 5, by Gary Friedrich and Mike Plug, Daredevil Johnny Blaze traded his soul to Mephisto to save Stuntman and his father, Crash Simpson, from terminal cancer. Despite the trade, Simpson died in a stunt gone wrong soon after his recovery. An angry Johnny Blaze confronted Mephisto, who made clear that he technically kept his word, as cancer wasn't the cause of Simpson's death. The deal itself resulted in Blaze bonding with Zarathos, the spirit of vengeance, giving the stuntman his powers. However, Johnny Blaze's choice to use his abilities for good and thus against Mephisto earned him the demon's ire. Since then, Mephisto has remained one of Ghost Rider's most stalwart enemies, while the latter has remained one of the Marvel Universe's most important heroes. And Ghost Rider, also important to another thing that I have predicted and talked about over the years, and that is that Marvel is putting together the Midnight Suns. And now with Mephisto, it makes even more sense that they will be coming to a screen near us soon. Other deals. Mephisto made a deal with Cynthia Von Doom. Why is this important? Because Dr. Doom is coming to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, played by Robert Downey Jr. for now. So Mephisto made a deal in the comic books with Cynthia Von Doom, and when Victor Von Doom was a child, his family experienced persecution in Latveria under the Baron due to their Romani heritage. His mother, Cynthia Von Doom, responded by making a deal with Mephisto, trading her soul for the power to fight back against her oppressors. However, unbeknownst to her, the power Cynthia wielded against her enemies resulted in the death of innocent children. As Cynthia lamented her actions and renounced her power, she was killed by one of the Baron's men, and her soul became trapped in hell. Cynthia's deal with Mephisto had massive ramifications for Victor Von Doom and drove him to become a villain. The accident that disfigured Victor was the result of an attempt to build a machine that could communicate with his mother in the afterlife. He also learned magic in hopes of rescuing her. Eventually, with the help of Dr. Stephen Strange, Victor freed his mother in Doctor Strange and Dr. Doom Triumph and Torment, which was back in 1989 by Roger Stern and Mike Mignola. So that is another deal that was made, and he did free his mother. Now, Spider-Man has been involved with Mephisto. This is another thing to know because Spider-Man is dealing with potentially Daredevil and the Punisher in Spider-Man 4 with Tom Holland. And again, Midnight Suns, Daredevil, Punisher, those Marvel Knights make sense here if they are connected to the MCU and they are vigilantes, that they might be fighting Mephisto. And if they are connected to Spider-Man, then Spider-Man might eventually connect to Mephisto. Now, in the 2000s, Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, was married to Mary Jane Watson. So, in Amazing Spider-Man's One More Day back in 1999, it was a storyline by J. Michael Straczynski and Joe Quesada. It saw Aunt May on her deathbed after she was shot in the wake of Peter's decision to unmask during Civil War, the comic back in 2006. Racked with guilt, Peter frantically sought a way to save Aunt May, and he went, and then Mephisto came to him. Disguised as a young girl, eventually revealed to be Peter's future daughter with Mary Jane, Mephisto offered to save Aunt May's life. In return, the wall crawler had to give up his marriage with Mary Jane. Spider-Man eventually agreed to the deal. A lot of questions surrounded Mephisto's deal with Peter. Why did he trade for the hero's marriage rather than his soul? Why he seemed to bring Harry Osborn back from the dead. Yeah, Sinister War 2021 by Nick Spencer, Mark Bagley, and Federico Vicentini answered that, revealing that Mephisto made the deal because in the future either Peter or his daughter with Mary Jane would thwart the demon's eventual reign over humanity. So if you get rid of their marriage, then you don't have to deal with their child, which means that Mephisto would not have lost at the hands of Peter or his daughter with Mary Jane. So that's another deal that was made here, and not for a soul, but essentially because Mephisto knew in the future that something was going to happen to him if Mary Jane and Peter stayed married and they had this child. So get rid of the marriage, get rid of the chance for the child, get rid of a future where he is thwarted. Now, Norman Osborn sold his son's soul. So nice of Norman. Never punishing himself, punishing other people, always thinking of himself. Additionally, I shouldn't say always. There's moments, right? There's moments with Norman Osborn. But a lot of times, I mean, we just saw him come back, played by Willem Dafoe in Spider-Man No More. And out of 3 Spider-Men, he has tried to ruin the lives of 2. So in the comics, Sinister War 2021 revealed that not only was Mephisto's deal with Spider-Man designed to prevent him from eventually opposing him, but that it was connected to another of the Devil's secret pacts. As a younger man, Norman Osborn struggled in business, and when things looked most dire, Mephisto offered to give him success in exchange for the soul of his son, Harry Osborn. Norman's deal with Mephisto resulted in Oscorp, one of Marvel Universe's most important companies, rising to prominence. However, the deal also precipitated Norman's eventual descent into madness and transformation into the Green Goblin, one of Spider-Man's fiercest and most deadly villains. And then we have a deal with Loki, which is important to know because Loki is in the MCU as well. Brian Michael Bendis and Olivier Coipel's Siege 2009 was an event that saw Loki manipulate Norman Osborn into attacking Asgard with his Dark Avengers. While that was happening, Loki captured the Disir, the undead Valkyries of Bor who fed on gods. Using the Disir as a bargaining chip, Loki traded them to Mephisto. In exchange, the demon gave Hela a piece of his realm to replace the one she lost. As a result, Loki was struck from the books of Hell, giving him absolute freedom from both Asgard and its afterlife. The deal, which could only be made with Mephisto, changed Loki in some major ways. Following his heroic death at the end of Siege in 2009, Loki was able to reincarnate as Kid Loki, and in this new form, the God of Mischief turned away from being one of Marvel's villains and instead became an anti-hero in the comics. So, and we also know that he made a deal with Doc Ock, speaking of Mephisto in the comics. In the 2010s, Otto Octavius, a.k.a. Dr. Octopus, swapped bodies with Spider-Man, seemingly killing his old foe in the process. However, as the story of Superior Spider-Man continued, Octavius grew to understand the negative impact of his actions, leading him to become more of a hero. As a hero, he even played a key role in stopping the Inheritors in both Spider-Verse 2014 and Spider-Geddon 2018. During Spider-Geddon 2018, Otto Octavius made an enemy of his alternate version of Norman alternate version of Norman Osborn with the powers of Spider-Man. in the pages of Superior Spider-Man 2018 by Christos Gage and Mike Hawthorne. The two tangled, and it soon became clear Octavius couldn't win the battle the way he was. Octavius tried to strike a deal with Mephisto to restore him to his old self for a day. Instead, the devil countered with an offer to permanently return Octavius to his original form, minus what he'd learned during his time in Peter's body. Octavius agreed and beat Spider Osborn, but in the process, he lost some of his closest friends, and he once returned again to being a villain. Here's one that's interesting. Phil Coulson, who we haven't seen in a while, he had a deal with Mephisto. In Deadpool 2015, issue number 31, which was a tie-in to Secret Empire, which is in 2017, Deadpool killed Phil Coulson on the orders of a villainous Captain America, pushing over the first domino in one of Mephisto's cleverest deals. The demon revived Coulson, who sold his soul to Mephisto in exchange for the Pandemonium Cube, which he used to rewrite reality. In this new world, which was the focus of Jason Aaron and Ed McGuinness's Heroes Reborn in 2021, the Avengers weren't superheroes. Mephisto was worshipped as a godly figure in the United States, and the Squadron Supreme was the country's premier crime-fighting team. By the end, Blade, who was unaffected by Coulson's actions, rallied the Avengers. Together, they restored reality and defeated Coulson. However, as Mephisto soon revealed, he had an ulterior motive. Giving Coulson the Pandemonium Cube proved to the Council of Red, a group of Mephistos from across the multiverse, just how much damage a single Mephisto could do. This kicked off the multiversal war he is currently waging in the page he waged in the Avengers 2018. So that's something to look at. So we have the Council of Red, which is a group of Mephistos from across the multiverse, as if one devil-ish figure isn't enough. So that's some history and some background on Mephisto and the deals that he has made in the comics. Will we see Phil Coulson again? Will he make a deal with the devil? Will we see Doc Ock do it? Will we see Loki, who's in the MCU, do it? Will we see Spider-Man make a deal with the devil? I mean, there are things. Victor Von Doom's mom, are we going to learn that she did? Looking back at the deals that he's made in the comics, a lot of these things can happen in the current MCU, and they can write this story in now that they've introduced Mephisto. So it'll be interesting to see how many deals he makes. I do want to take a look at some of the things he said in the Ironheart series that I paid attention to and wanted to make sure to... I mean, I paid attention to everything that was going on in the show, but these are some things I wanted to state about Mephisto. He said, out of the Forbes 100 richest list, I've made a deal with 100 of them, plus 14 kings, 3 popes, and also a beetle, Ringo. So he does state that he has made all of those deals in the MCU. And then when he is asked, and you saw in the video, when, not asked, but when Riri refers to him as Dormammu, he said, Dormammu isn't fit to clean my glorious a-hole. Gross. But, you know, we could see that obviously he does not have what some would call couth or manners. And of course, you know, he is a demon and considers himself the Satan or the devil of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? Of Earth 616. He approaches people as if he is the devil. He's making deals, and he is in this pocket realm, essentially stealing souls, but he does have a lot of parallels to what we would know the devil to be in the world that we are all living in reality. Now, we see that Riri makes a deal in order to get back Natalie's AI, and it ends up being Natalie. So there's something to the fact, and I was reading through that when we were reading through the history here about the deals that have been made by Mephisto in the Marvel Comics, is that he doesn't necessarily keep up his end of the bargain in maybe what the person was expecting, but he also says, hey, I did what you asked me to do, but he kind of puts a little twist on it. So he didn't bring back Natalie AI, he brought back Natalie. And remember that Riri looked like she wasn't going to do the deal at first when she thought it was Dormammu, and she said, what I want can't be done, the past is the past, and that's what the title was for Ironheart's Season 1 finale, Episode 6, The Past is the Past. And then she said this to Mephisto. She said, if I do this, it's just me you want, right? Nobody else. So obviously wanting to protect her loved ones. And Mephisto said, that's right. Will you sign with me, please? And this is where he makes himself look vulnerable. Come on, Riri, make my millennia. And then he put his hand out. And then, like I said, Natalie's back. And we don't know how the heck she is here. But Natalie is back. And there's a lot of questions. But here's the thing. And I do want to discuss this. Because this is something that definitely sticks out to me. We know that the Scarlet Witch was consumed with the fact that she had children in all other universes, all these other different universes in the multiverse, but she didn't have children in Earth 616, and she wanted to have kids. Now, in the comics, Mephisto is a part of that too. And she gets the Darkhold. She is consumed by magic, consumed by all this stuff, and she becomes evil, right? So we see her go from a hero, somebody who wants to do good, someone who is just broken and torn apart about Sokovia and what happened there and blaming herself, to somebody who is just blinded by the fact that she wants to have these children. She wants Billy and Tommy. And that kind of giving up of being a hero, of being good, we see the loss of that, right? And it's sad to see that with the Scarlet Witch, but it comes to be expected because of the comics and for people that know the comics and whatnot. Now, with Riri, this is written into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Ironheart and Mephisto, that's not something we hear in the history of Riri Williams. If you want to know about the history of Riri, and once again, thanks to marvel.fandom.com, Riri was born shortly after the death of her father, Riri Williams Sr., who she was named after. She grew up in the South Shore neighborhood of Chicago, Illinois, so that stays true in the show. And she lives with her sister, Sharon, their mother, Ronnie. Now, we don't see her sister, Sharon, but we do see her mother, Ronnie, in this Marvel Cinematic Universe iteration of it. And her stepdad, Gary, we see him, but he's already died when we are in this Ironheart TV series with Riri. When Riri was 5, behavioral problems led her parents to consult a child psychologist who certified Riri as a super genius after undergoing several tests. At the psychologist's recommendation, Riri's parents looked into special care to foster her abilities while also giving her emotional support. Sometime during elementary school, Riri declared to her teacher that she knew what she wanted to do in life, become a scientist, but was dismayed when the teacher encouraged her, as Riri wanted to be told she couldn't do it, just for the sake of proving others wrong, and was angered when her teacher informed her that such attitudes toward black people and women had long passed, angrily glaring at her teacher until the teacher reluctantly and half-heartedly told her she'd never be Tony Stark, to which Riri eagerly set out to prove her wrong. So this teacher was very supportive and very positive, and in the comics, Riri wanted to make it a race thing, and it wasn't, but she needed to have a chip on her shoulder. We see that when Riri shows up at Black Panther Wakanda Forever. We see that there might be some undertones of different racial thoughts, and we know that she's got an attitude and really rough around the edges. We see that more in the show, and it gets a little aggravating. And then you think, and this is something that's frustrating, is you think that Riri turns a corner, but then she makes a deal with Mephisto. And I will end the show talking about that here on Superpowered Pop inside the Parker Banner, Kent and Wayne Studios. I do want to make mention of that. Parker Banner, Kent and Wayne is our choice when it comes to comic books and gaming. You can go to 21500 Catawba Ave, Suite A in Cornelius, North Carolina, and check them out today. They're open 7 days a week. Let them know that DT sent you. You just say DT, Superpowered Pop, Dan Tortora, whatever you'd like, but DT is easy enough to remember. And, of course, Matt Milburn and his team do a tremendous job at Parker Banner, Kent, and Wayne. So I do want to make mention of that. Now, Riri's level of intelligence caused her to retreat inside her own mind and become an introvert. She met her only friend, Natalie Washington, when she was 10 years old. And Natalie, of course, when we pick up this Ironheart Season 1, we know that Natalie and Gary, her stepdad of Riri, were both killed in a drive-by at Gary's shop. So they're at, Gary's at the garage, and Natalie and Riri are there, and Natalie and Gary are shot, and they both die on the scene here. Now, in the comics, Natalie is her best friend as well, and Riri caught Natalie's attention while working at her open garage on some inventions meant to hopefully help superheroes someday. This is in the comics. A year after that, she was given a scholarship to MIT. Tragedy struck Riri when she was 13 while having a picnic at Marquette Park. Riri, her family, and Natalie were caught in the line of fire when a drive-by shooting hit some bystanders. Even though Riri was unscathed, both Natalie and Riri's stepfather were hit by stray bullets. So in the comic books, this is at Marquette Park, and in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in Marvel Television, it happens in Gary's garage, which I had just mentioned here. Now, what started as a challenge for herself ended up becoming a secret project to create her own suit of armor. After reverse engineering technology from the outdated Iron Man armored Model 41, Riri started creating her own prototype version. So she reverse engineered Iron Man's Model 41 and created a prototype of the Iron Man armor using mainly stolen material from campus. This we see in the TV show. When security caught notice of her suspicious activities, Riri decided to don the suit of armor and fly away, which we also see in the TV show in episode 1. After flying around the country trying to get a handle of her suit's flying capabilities, Riri intercepted a couple of inmates escaping from the New Mexico State Penitentiary. She managed to stop the speeding truck that they were using, but it was at the cost of her armor's integrity. Riri eventually returned to her house to keep working on her suit, much to her mother's dismay. After learning of Riri's accomplishment, Tony Stark visited her and chose to endorse Riri to become a superhero using a repaired version of her armor. Riri later assisted Iron Man during the second superhero Civil War, fighting against the forces of Captain Marvel. This obviously is not going to happen because in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Iron Man that we know of Earth 616, played by Robert Downey Jr., has died at the end of the events of Avengers Endgame. Now, in the end of the Civil War, Tony Stark, I was looking at Tony Stark fell, and so I was going to call him Tony Fark, but Tony Stark fell into a coma fighting Captain Marvel. Riri decided to continue his legacy with the guidance of an AI duplicate of Stark, and in the TV show, it is an AI duplicate of Natalie. But in the comic books, it's Stark. Riri created an improved suit of armor and took up the alias of Ironheart, and Riri rapidly caught the attention of allies and enemies of Tony Stark alike, and so we know that that happens here. And then she goes on adventures with the champions and joining that team and so on and so forth. And then obviously she has some solo adventures. I do want to make a note here of when Natalie comes into this. So we do know that she is connected to the Ten Rings in the comic books, and we know that Shang-Chi has its first movie that came out a few years back, and the Ten Rings were a big part of that. And at the end of that, the Ten Rings are being studied by Wong, and he talks about the fact that they've been giving us off this ping, this beacon, and so, like, who are they reaching out to in space? And when Wong is discussing this, he is discussing this with holograms of essentially like a Zoom call, so to speak, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe with the Hulk, who is in Bruce Banner form, and Captain Marvel. So that's just something to note, that she is connected to the Ten Rings. So I do want to take a look at this. So she was asked by Mrs. Marvel to investigate the disappearance of Miles Morales in the comic books, who during her prolonged absence from the champions had quit the team, breaking the promise he had made to her. She resolved to finding him and once again showed a proclivity to stalking by using his cell phone data to ascertain his last known location, much to Natalie's amusement. So we do know that Natalie, Natalie, is something that does happen in the comic books here. So Natalie is an AI in the comic books as well. So first it's Tony Stark, then it's Natalie. I do want to mention here, she was shocked to see that the AI that she had been developing from scanning and compositing her brainwaves and memories was complete and had taken the form of an aged-up Natalie, her long-dead best friend. This also happens in the TV show that we just saw. And like I said, she has a connection to the Ten Rings. It'll be interesting to see what exactly this is going to look like. To just make a note about the Ten Rings in the comics, recognizing the symbol of Eclipse's head as being part of the Ten Rings, Riri realized she needed magical assistance and flew to New York to consult Doctor Strange. Against his judgment, having reservations over the damage such a quest driven by hubris could do to Riri, as it had done to Tony Stark in the past, Strange was able to show her that the wellspring of power was located in Wakanda. Riri then sought Tony's help in gaining passage to Wakanda. So we do know in the comic books that there is a connection between Wakanda and Riri Williams, just like there's a connection in the MCU. We first meet Riri when she is brought to Wakanda by Shuri, and she does meet Shuri in the comics, and despite a rocky introduction, was able to help her disperse an invasion of shadow creatures that were leaking out from the wellspring. After being met by Silhouette, who was on the same journey as them to stop her twin brother Midnight's fire, the three of them made their way to the wellspring, where they encountered yet more shadow creatures, defeating with the help of Okoye, who had tailed them there. The four of them gained access to the wellspring, where thanks to Silhouette, they were able to discover the Ten Rings in the process of reopening the wellspring, among whom were Midnight's Fire and Eclipse, as well as Tamo and their leader, Dune, who revealed himself to be Riri's father. They were discovered and apprehended by the Ten Rings, but Riri initiated a battle for the key to the wellspring, where she revealed herself as Dune's daughter. Using Pym particles gifted by Nadia, she was able to obtain the key, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of things in the stories here, but the Ten Rings we know are actual physical weapons, and then we know that the Ten Rings as well, talking about this society and whatnot, talking about this group. So she is connected to the Ten Rings, which I think is important, and I wanted to mention because the Ten Rings are already in the MCU, and we know that we're going to see Shang-Chi come back. So the Ten Rings have a history in Marvel already, and so it's a secret society that built their principles around the wellspring of power. The group's first target was the armored hero Ironheart. So in the comics, the first target that the Ten Rings had was in fact Ironheart, which is really interesting here because we know that the Ten Rings are returning. So yeah, it's definitely interesting here that we have the Ten Rings as weapons and we have the Ten Rings as a group. And they're both very much in the MCU and they're connected to Riri. So a lot of the stuff from the comics, there is a connection. There is a connection to Doctor Strange there. And of course we see in the TV show a connection to magic and to Camertage with Zelma, which is connected to Doctor Strange. So there is that Doctor Strange connection in both the comics and the TV show. There's a connection to the MCU and Marvel Comics with the Ten Rings and Ironheart, as I just mentioned. And so there's a bunch of different pieces here. Natalie becoming AI in the comics and in the TV show. But this whole Mephisto thing and the hood and all of that, this is something that is playing out in television. So, having Mephisto. And when I first heard about this, I was like, why in the heck would they have, Marvel's character that thinks he's the devil? Why would he have any place in Ironheart? But Ironheart's villain is the Hood. And of course, Anthony Ramos, who did a great job with the character, if you have, they just had another opportunity because, it's like, where did he get his cape from and who is he talking to throughout this whole thing? And you're thinking the whole time that you're watching it that this has to be Mephisto that he's talking to. So we do know that Parker Robbins, the Hood, is in Marvel Comics in Earth 616. So we do know that he exists there. He is known as Demon Boy, Smokey McChimney, which sounds ridiculous. And he is also known as Ghost Rider, not just the Hood. So Parker Davis Robbins. He was an unscrupulous man involved with low-level criminal activities. And one of his inspirations was the costume criminal Electro, who's obviously connected to Peter Parker, a.k.a. Spider-Man. And unbeknownst to Parker Robbins, the accursed Hood turned him into a host of the dread Dormammu, Lord of the Dark Dimension. So we do know that the connection with the Hood in the comics connects him to Dormammu. So that's another piece here. That's the okey doke, the bait and switch here that, okay, you bring in the Hood, and so is it Dormammu and not Mephisto and that he's talking to, that is essentially his overlord? Then Zelma says Dormammu, so then you start thinking, okay, then is it Dormammu? And it ends up being Mephisto that the Hood is talking to in this TV show, not Dormammu. So there are some changes, and I don't hate it by any stretch of the imagination, but having Ironheart be mystical and kind of have some Scarlet Witch looking magic coming out of her, all in red and whatnot, it also makes you wonder, the magic that Zelma has, is this the same, is what called Mephisto, is that his magic? The Hood that Parker Robbins wore and became the Hood, that Hood that he was wearing, right, it had life to it. When Riri is studying it, we see that this thing has a power source, but no idea where this power source comes from, right? It just seems like it's essentially the Hood is alive. And so if we're dealing with this dark magic coming from the Hood, and then we see this red magic coming out of Riri and out of the Ironheart suit, and we know that typically red is the color of the devil. It's the color of Mephisto. We see him reflected. He's in red. So the question becomes, did Zelma take of the mystical realm? Did she take magic from Mephisto? And is that how Mephisto connected to Riri Williams? So my final note that I want to make here, and I appreciate y'all being here all the way through because there's a lot to unpack and discuss. And again, I could not do this without the incredible research of marvel.fandom.com. So I definitely want to give a ton of credit to the Marvel database there and all the work that they do. I also want to thank IMDb, who obviously, for TV shows and movies and whatnot, give us a lot of information on the cast and make everything easy here to be able to go back and reflect on names and actors and actresses and whatnot. So the final note that I want to make with this TV show, and Dominique Thorne, playing this character, Riri Williams. She's rough around the edges, like I said. She's angry almost the entire 6 episodes. She won't talk to her mom. She won't talk to her love interest. She won't talk to Natalie's AI. She doesn't want to talk to anybody. She doesn't want to deal with anything. And the more that she goes on this kind of I'm pissed off all the time and I'm rough around the edges, the more that stuff gets messed up, right? And so you're just hoping at some point that she will talk to somebody and, stop screwing things up, essentially, because as she's going down this angry lane, she is not helping anybody and she's not helping herself. But here's the thing, going down this angry lane is exactly one of the things that I think pushes her to make this deal with Mephisto. Mephisto plays on people's weaknesses. And just like the devil does in the real world, you have to have a close relationship with God. You have to be strong even when you're weak. And Riri did not grieve properly, it looks like. She hasn't gotten over it. She's in a lot of pain. She has a lot of anger. So Mephisto comes to an angry, confused, frustrated, anxious, stressed out, grieving young kid and takes advantage of her. And what I don't like that this series did is that Riri made a deal with him. Because I don't think you take the weight of Mephisto away at all if she doesn't make a deal. The Hood's deal with Mephisto brings Mephisto into this TV show. Seeing what the deal with Mephisto did to Parker Robbins, aka the Hood, to me was enough. And having that conversation with Riri at the table, is she a hero or is she a villain? Now she's a villain. You know, Riri, think about it. Villains are the ones that succumb to their anger and rage. Heroes take that pain and that angst and that anger and that rage and that sadness and that struggle, and they try to turn it into something good. Riri did not. And so my frustration with this series is that you took the hero and the hero made a deal with the devil. The person who is the iron-powered hero in the absence of Iron Man. Okay, here's Ironheart. It's like, what if Iron Man made a deal with the devil? What would those 10 years look like at Marvel? And then his snap is not on the side of the Avengers, right? So what I don't like about this is now Riri is connected to Mephisto. She is connected to this dark dimension, this pocket realm. Her soul is his. And we don't know how Natalie came back. We don't know what that's going to look like. But now Mephisto has another deal. We know in the Marvel Comics, I read off the deals that he has. We know that in Earth 616, like I said, we know that in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he has a deal with every one of the 100 richest people on the Forbes list, 14 kings, 3 popes, and Ringo of the Beatles. So we know that those are all deals that he's made. We know Parker is another deal he made. And now with Riri. The struggle that I have with this is Riri is not a hero anymore. Now, do heroes let their anger get the best of them at times? Do heroes sometimes become anti-heroes? Yes. But Riri making a deal with the devil, making a deal with Mephisto, this puts us in a place of how does she get saved? What's going to happen to her? And why would she do that? Like, Riri seems Riri doesn't trust anybody. She doesn't even seem to trust her own mom at times. She doesn't seem to get close to anybody and really show anybody 100% trust. Yet she makes a deal with Mephisto. So you can't sit down with your mom and talk about what's going on in your life until the last episode, but you could sit down with a total stranger that you open a door and he's the only person sitting in the restaurant and he has pizza, and she questions everything in her life, including from the people that she knows, but she doesn't question a total stranger sitting in a restaurant by himself. And then she thinks he's Dormammu, and when she finds out that he's Mephisto, Dormammu was going to make her get up. Mephisto doesn't. So it's weird how someone who doesn't trust anybody decides to trust a stranger, and she thought he was a monster, and then she finds out he's not Dormammu, but he's obviously still something. And like I said, when he laughs, you can hear that he has a different voice than human beings. There's this other stuff that there's a different voice that kind of sneaks out of him in a couple moments at that table. So it's just weird. Someone who's not trusting would trust a stranger, and why she would make this deal, why she would do something like this. She saw Parker. She saw his body. She saw how the Hood had turned him into this weird looking demon creature. She saw all these, the blood veins all over his body. So why would she think that making a deal with this guy would be any different. I mean, does she think it's from the Hood? Because the Hood belongs to him. So I don't know if maybe she, in her head, thought, oh, the Hood is what made Parker that way, not this guy. So maybe that's something. But that was just kind of a weird situation for me because I feel like Riri would have questioned him more. I don't feel like she would have made a decision right off the bat. And I also feel that she would have wanted Gary and Natalie back and not just one of them. And again, she fought the Hood and she was around the Hood and she saw, that he had these scars on his body. And she also realized that this Hood didn't come from this realm, didn't come from Earth 616. So, why she would trust somebody who Parker has this Hood. It doesn't connect to her like, oh, Parker was probably close to this guy and he probably got the Hood from this guy. And now I'm going to shake hands with this guy and trust that I'm not going to have these weird veins and pain all throughout my body. So it just seems strange that she didn't question that or put those things together in the TV show. And having a hero that made a deal with Mephisto, not that we haven't seen it in the comic books, but what does that show us? Right? Because we have this new hero in Ironheart who's not a hero. And how will they save her? Can they save her? And what does he want to do with her? He said, you're once in a generation mind and my skills together. What is he going to do with her mind? What is he using her for? Because he doesn't make deals with people that he doesn't think he can get something out of, right? We're talking about a demon. We're talking about a devilish figure. We're not talking about God. We're not talking about an upstanding good soul. We're not talking about an angel. We're talking about a demon. And so obviously there's something he's gained from working with Parker, and there's something that he seeks to gain from working with Riri. We see her, speaking of working, we see her working on a bunch of stuff and writing a bunch of things on her board and don't know exactly what it is. So that's something else to pay attention to, is exactly what is going on here. So that's another interesting piece too, is what is she trying to figure out on her board, right? And that's something too. Is she trying to figure out the magic that's inside of her suit? So that's a question. And how much time has passed, right? So I just feel like we already saw one deal with Mephisto. I know that the deal with Riri obviously is a big twist and it's dangerous, but I mean, now we can't see her as a hero. Not right now. And so I think that kind of puts a damper on her story and her being a future leader, because she can't be a leader right now. So that's something that I circle and I look into. And I will say that it seems like the overlord of Marvel Studios, that starts with a D, seems to be okay with satanic things, and not only satanic things, but involving children. There was something in their Tim Allen Santa Claus show. Now there's Mephisto in this deal with a younger person, and not that a deal with anybody is good, but like involving kids and involving satanic stuff. It's just a little interesting for that 6-letter company that starts with D, that used to have morals and values and ethics and seemingly a belief in God. So I question that going on in the background. I'm not going to act like I don't see that. And I pray that they return to God. And so that's just something I take away from it. But I will say in a future video coming up very soon, what team is going to fight Marvel's devil, Mephisto? Well, I think the Marvel Knights, the Midnight Suns. I'm thinking Ghost Rider. I'm thinking, well, let's say it right now. Moon Knight is here. Daredevil's here. Punisher's here. Scarlet Witch is here. Jessica Jones is here. Maybe Luke Cage is here. We look at a hopeful Ghost Rider that will be coming in. So I feel like this story has been writing itself, and I have said for over a year now, why make all those Netflix shows and then bring all those characters over into the MCU, have it be canon, start making new content with some of these Marvel Knights and Midnight Suns type characters, and then bring in Mephisto and have Doctor Strange and have this dark realm of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this dark area of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then not do the Marvel Knights or the Midnight Suns. Just want to let y'all know here that the Marvel Knights have included, taking a look at this right now. So the Marvel Knights first assembled to investigate a mysterious massacre of Red Mafia members, allied with his ex-partner, the Black Widow, and the young hero Dagger. So it was Daredevil, Dagger, Black Widow. So that's something to look at here. Punisher, Shang-Chi. So think about this right now. And then going through this now, Cloak and Dagger. Then Black Widow, Moon Knight. We're seeing these now. Black Widow, obviously she's dead. But you have another Widow character, right? So you have Yelena. So Yelena exists in Marvel 616. Daredevil. Luke Cage. Moon Knight. Doctor Strange. Cloak and Dagger had their show. Had their show on ABC, whatever the heck it is now, Freeform, but it was Fox Family, it was ABC Family. So you have Cloak and Dagger, Punisher, Shang-Chi. I mean, the Marvel Knights, right? That's all there for the taking. And then the Midnight Suns, to let you know of their membership. The Midnight Suns have had Blade, who's supposed to be coming in. They've had Deadpool, who exists, Hulk, who exists, Magic, who doesn't yet, Morbius, who exists in the Sony Spider-Verse, Ghost Rider, who has existed, but we'll see what happens now, Captain Marvel, who exists, Captain America, who exists in some iteration, and Doctor Strange, as well as Dr. Voodoo, who we haven't seen yet, Blade, Elsa Bloodstone, she was in that one, that special engagement, that Marvel Spotlight. So we know that Elsa Bloodstone exists. We know that Doctor Strange exists. We know Wong is in this, Moon Knight. So again, the Midnight Suns and the Marvel Knights have crossover in team members. What is the point of having the existence of Elsa Bloodstone, Daredevil, Punisher, Doctor Strange, Moon Knight, Cloak and Dagger, and so on and so forth, if you're not trying to Ghost Rider, right? And like I said, in some iteration, Wong. What is the point if you're not looking to bring them together? And if you have these anti-heroes and these people that work in the realms of magic and mystical and spiritual worlds, and have these, some of them are earth-based heroes that don't have specific powers, and some of them work in the world of magic and spiritual things. So why would you not have them fight Mephisto? So I think, in my opinion, bringing Luke Cage and the Luke Cage shows and Iron Fist shows and Jessica Jones and Daredevil and Punisher, bringing all that Netflix stuff to Disney Plus, which I predicted they were going to do years ago, bringing that in, having Daredevil Born Again, having the Punisher show up in Daredevil Born Again, have it still be Charlie Cox as the Daredevil, and have John Bernthal as the Punisher, and then have Elsa Bloodstone and what we saw with that Marvel Spotlight, right, of the Werewolf by Night, which connects to Moon Knight, and then Moon Knight had his series. What is the point of doing all of this and bringing all these characters in, and now bringing in Mephisto, if you don't take these mystical and spiritual characters and earth-based characters and put them all together in a team to fight Mephisto. But I'm going to talk about that more in a future video. I probably said too much, but I can't help myself. I wanted to talk about it. But I thank you for watching Superpowered Pop in the Parker Banner Kent and Wayne studios. Go to Parker Banner Kent and Wayne on 21500 Catawba Ave, Suite A in Cornelius, North Carolina, just outside of Charlotte, 7 days a week. Let them know that DT sent you. You can find out more by searching PBKW Comics on your favorite social media. And of course, many thanks to the entire team led by Matt Milburn at Parker Banner, Kent, and Wayne. I thank you for watching my thoughts on Ironheart. Now that we know that Mephisto is in the MCU, it is Sacha Baron Cohen. Congratulations to those that had the heads up on that. You know, we're able to get that out. And to see this, I think, is even more, like I said, stating that the Marvel Knights and the Midnight Suns are coming, hopefully soon. And what does this mean for Riri Williams, Ironheart, a character who we barely know, who is now working for Marvel's Devil? Strange, but we'll have to figure it out. And also, speaking of strange, Doctor Strange, at the end of Doctor Strange 2, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Clea shows up and she cuts, she uses her knife and cuts right through where they are into another realm, and it looks like the realm of Dormammu, and obviously Clea is connected to Dormammu, and Dormammu was mentioned here, and it seems like we're going to need the help of Doctor Strange with Ironheart's predicament now with Mephisto, so maybe that's what Doctor Strange 3 is going to be all about. Maybe we will see Dormammu again, because why have Clea, who's connected to him, if you're not going to have Dormammu? Why mention him again, knowing that obviously he still exists? He was not killed. He was just put in that infinite loop by Doctor Strange as Doctor Strange's prisoner, and then the deal that Doctor Strange made with Dormammu is, hey, you leave Earth alone, I will take you out of this prison, but Dormammu is very much alive. And like I said, when Clea cuts through and we see a little look into this other realm, it looks very much like what Dormammu looked like in the first Doctor Strange. So I'm going to venture to say that the end credit scene of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness will connect to Ironheart, will connect to Mephisto, and will connect with trying to figure this thing out and thinking that she is going to go, Riri Williams is going to go to Doctor Strange and potentially Wong asking for help. And keep in mind that in Marvel TV, Wong had that girl drop into his living room when he was watching television, and she was holding a heart and talking about making a deal. And so Mephisto, I think, is very much alive in that as well. So connections have come. They've been playing with it. Mephisto's name was mentioned inside of the Agatha All Along series. So there's a lot to be said about the fact that he is actually here now. And now we're going to find out how many were just calling out the name and it was just to mess with fans, and how much of it is actually going to be connected. But we'll see, because it seems like the end of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness now makes more sense with Ironheart's Mephisto story. Thank you for watching Superpowered Pop here with Dan Tortora, aka DT. Remember, your true hero lies within, and we look forward to talking with you soon. I don't know how to say goodbye, so I'll say see you soon.